I like how you picked up on.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Oh, there, I'm saying the Pledge of Allegiance. What, why is there such a? big-
I think it's like built in for, you know, the ability to cut the cathedral.
For my amusement.
Kate Brian was off the road again.
Well, I can't move that fast, so there's that.
Yeah, we might be able to cut it short.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, no.
yeah.
Oh, there, I'm saying the Pledge of Allegiance. What, why is there such a?
I think it's like built in for, you know, the ability to cut the cathedral.
For my amusement.
Kate Brian was off the road again.
Well, I can't move that fast, so there's that.
Yeah, I mean, if I can be able to cut it short. I don't know how it turns out.
Can you just mute the TV? Oh, Roku. It's on the side. It's the buttons on the side of it.
All right, yeah, there you go.
You're lucky I own a Roku, I guess. Okay, so policy board meeting. Subcommittee board meeting here at 6 o'clock on February 21st. We have the agenda and we're jumping down to call to order. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Nope.
And then jumping into our agenda items. Tonight we have policies JBN, JBA, which is sexual harassment, and then you have JBA, JBN, which is sexual harassment. For those that are listening online, JBM, the G stands for staff, and then the J stands for student. Bless you. And then we have policy JFCF, which is in need of updating as well. And then also we have policies ACB, all students belong, policy KAB, parents' rights, and the AR, which is attached to that, along with discussion on policy JFCA, dress code, and the AR, which is attached as well. In your packet, what I put before you is that I wanted to update some policies, and those were the first three policies in regards to sexual harassment, hazing, harassment, intimidation, bullying, and menacing. I had noticed that they were outdated. So for example, if you're taking a look at policy GBN, JBA, that last time it was updated was in 2006. So it appears that we haven't been able to keep up with the last couple of updates to that particular policy. And then taking a look at policy JFCF, the last time it was updated in 2015. And again, looks like there's been a couple of cycles where we haven't kept up. So in your packet, what you have is on top, you have the existing policy. And then behind it, you have an example of what the latest version is from OSBA. So taking a look at policy GBN, JBA, and then right behind it, you see, and it will say in the upper corner where it says OSBA, that's the recommended language. Where you see it says Newburgh, that's the existing policy. So on this as an example, you're not seeing any edits or updates. This is just a clean form that OSBA just sent us outright as far as what the updated policy is. And then I've also included in your packet a summary as to why the need for the update. But I think it's somewhat self-explanatory that we are needing to update our policies in regards to the areas of harassment. So I went through that rather quickly. I'll slow down and see if there's any questions or concerns that you may have.
I don't think I have any concerns with it. Any concerns from you guys?
Okay, so What do I have?
So is this, this has
That's,
already been tailored.
I tailored that, yes, just so that you could see the names. So those are all the people that are currently listed. Yeah. I dropped those names in. I can tell you too, from my office, it's also helpful that if we do have policies that are up to date, as I've shared with you, GBN, JBA and JBA, GBN, which are two separate policies, they are outdated. And because our policies are outdated, it doesn't mean that I follow that policy because, and I know that sounds bad, but when I see a policy from 2006, that's when you reach out to attorneys, because I know the laws have changed several times just in the past 7-8 years that I've been a superintendent. So you follow the law. And these policies are based on law, but because these policies are dated, it again will cause confusion or may cause confusion when you're dealing with family or staff and they're saying, well, your policy reads this way. And then I have to say, well, but the law has been updated and the law reads that way. And so for us, it's just a matter of just showing that we're keeping current as far as, especially in the areas of sexual harassment, and then also with harassment, bullying, menacing, cyberbullying, and so forth. Again, just so that we're staying up to date and current on these policies.
Any highlights in terms of what changed between our current policy and your updated?
I would just say there are much more, it's more multi-layered with the state legislature just expecting better reporting in a more timely fashion and in a more detailed fashion in comparison to what the standard was back in 2006. That gives you just a general oversense. Prior to, there wasn't as much reporting requirements as there is now. For example, when you send out a letter saying that there is a sexual harassment complaint, you have to offer various levels of services and support for the victim or alleged victim in that particular situation, depending, where before you didn't have to do that. So it's just more of an education of letting families know what their options are, but it's also protection for the staff that there are certain procedural steps that need to take place. And I think the critical component with this policy is they now require that the Title IX director's name be put out there in all the buildings and on our website so that people know who to call and to contact. In this case, I happen to be the Title IX director. Title IX used to be when it was originally brought out, it affected schools where it was equal access for both males and females when it came to athletics. And the state of Oregon has greatly expanded that to now where we're talking about not just male, female, but multiple genders and equal access to all. And so this policy is much more broad in its definition and protections than it used to be.
And so everything is highlighted, that is the new.
Yes, you're looking at policy JFCF.
Mhm.
Yes, that is,
It's like added stuff.
they've added new language to that. Yes. So again, what I'm asking the committee is that we adopt that updated language. Again, this policy is 7 years old and we need to be more in tune with the latest changes in the law in the
Or
state,
should we stick with the district one first?
whichever you prefer.
To kind of
It-
like Is that what we should do? Just kind of go through and approve?
For me, I'm concrete sequential, so my preference is, yeah, we go off of my script, but again, just because I have a script or agenda
Stick with the first.
and then work our way down the list. Okay,
Okay with that?
No, I'm fine with that. I was reading through these earlier. Maybe I'm getting that confused with the one.
you want to turn your mic on?
Oh, sorry. I read through these earlier. And maybe it was the JFCF policy, but it talked about training, periodic training. I can't remember which one it was, when it talked about that there needs to be periodic training and stuff.
Well, if you're talking about Title IX training, that's something where I attend training at least once a year as the Title IX coordinator. What we're going to need to do in this district is greatly expand those folks that can do investigations in the district, as an example, that have updated training when they go through that process. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can create a policy, but how do you educate people who it applies for, not just possible victims of, but perpetrators of? I noticed that we put it in the student and employee handbooks.
And it's also our policies will be posted
On the
online as
website.
well. Yep.
And
Yep.
then it also says at least an 8.5 by 11 in each
Posters.
district facility.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So again, it's just putting that word out and that notice out of who to contact and just making people more aware.
Okay. I guess this applies. What kind of issues are we having? Do we have a metric on this? On sexual harassment?
It's one of those things where you hope you don't have enough cases to generate a metric off of.
Well, I guess here's what I'm thinking, right? I mean, yes, this is proactive, right? That we have policies like this because sexual harassment does exist. I guess my thought is this enough? In other words, in the military, we had annual training that we'd have to go through. And I guess my thought is, if it's becoming prevalent, then something's wrong and we need to do more. So you're giving me the, you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, no,
And so I guess I'm asking the question, is this currently a problem within the district? How does our district compare statewide or nationwide with regards to this type of thing?
Okay, I see what you're saying. I'm not aware of any statistics that are out there where District A had 10 sexual assaults this past school year and District B had 42 and then District C had 0.
Mhm.
I don't know if that is such a good metrics anyway, because District C may not be following through and they had 0. Or District B, where anything they just automatically labeled it, whether it met that metric or not. And so they had a high number of 42 in the District A, which I said I think was 11. There's somewhere in between. So having a solid metric like that and trying to standardize that process, I'm not aware of it. What I can tell you is that OSBA has mandated that we update these policies because there is becoming more of an issue throughout the state as a whole, and that we as districts need to do a better job of educating our staff and our students that if there's this type of harassment going on, that they report it and that you deal with it, and you deal with it in a proactive way as best you can. And part of that is the educating of our staff, but part of it too is that when it does come up, that there is a source or a resource that you can reach out to and we can come alongside and help. This year, I've been involved in 3 or 4 cases where I've had to deal with sexual harassment type cases. And 2 of those have risen to a level of Title IX. And so that's where it's more detailed and more involved than just our policy that we currently have. And whenever I'm in any of those situations, I'm consulting with the attorneys because I'm talking about what is the criteria and what does that look like? And does it rise to the level of our policy, or does it need to go to a higher standard and under a Title IX? Because under a Title IX, as an example, I brought in outside investigators because we didn't have anybody in staff that was trained to do the proper investigation. And as a Title IX coordinator, I can't be both the decision maker and the investigator. That's a federal law or a nuance in the federal law. So this upcoming year, we're going to have staff that is trained so that when allegations do come up, that they are allowed to do the investigation, as an example.
Okay. Do we find that this type of thing is more prevalent among adults or children?
A rough generalization, a Title IX would involve an adult and a student. That's a general standard. If it's student to student, it's more based on our policy level, the GBN, JBA, or JBA, GBN. So, and the just again, a real rough, if it's staff to student, that's an automatic trigger for a Title IX. But again, I consult with the attorneys and discuss, because there are times when it's student to student and it does meet that criteria.
Okay.
So with your permission, we'll go ahead with the first 2 policies and move those on to the board for their permission for a first reading for the upcoming meeting, which is policy GBN, JBA, and JBA, GBN, sexual harassment policies. We okay with that?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
Yep.
sexual harassment one.
Right. I think there needs to be a little more discussion around JFCF, which is hazing, harassment, intimidation, bullying, menacing, cyberbullying, teen dating violence, domestic violence, student. And so taking a look at our existing policy for 2015 as opposed to the sample policy that OSBA recommends, what kind of questions or comments do you have?
Well, on this one, we do have that. On this one, they do have the training and education, and so do we have training on this or programs for the students? And if we do, what is it, and then when do we have those? Like, is it in assembly, or is it through certain classes that they do this training program for the students, or what are we doing with that right now, or are we doing?
I can tell you that our basic health curriculum discusses that, and I know that it goes down to the middle school. As a former middle school principal, I know that it was part of our health curriculum. And so what does it look like, for example, if you're on a date and somebody says no? And so stressing that no means no. And so that's, again, a very basic level. But again, I do know that there's those types of trainings that take place within our health classes starting at the 6th grade. As far as any type of other training that are going on, whether they're assemblies or that, I am not aware of that at this time.
Because I know that it seems like we have, a lot of that bullying going on in our schools and with kids. And so I'd like to know, what kind of training or programs that we are doing
Okay. I do know
for that, the bullying. And
for
all
the
that kind of
bullying
stuff.
component, I do know that is a K-12 that is going on, but I can offer you and seek out and find more specifics on that. But yeah, I do know that's embedded into the curriculum, K-12, or at least in my past life as superintendent, that was part of the training and the requirement that we had. It was that was incorporated, not just in the health classes, because elementary, with one teacher all day long and a group of students, you could blend it back and forth between subject areas that are being taught at the elementary level. But I can do more research on that and get an answer for you on that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. So in taking a look at policy JF-CF, you can see where there's added language, but you can also see where there's bracketed language that's on there too. And so that's up for you to make, as far as whether you want bracketed language in there or not, or whether you want it deleted or not. So for example, in the title, it says hazing, which is in brackets, and then it says harassment, intimidation, bullying, menacing is in brackets. I would strongly recommend that you include the words menacing and hazing in this policy as well. And so again, you have the choice of whether you want those words or terms in there, but I think throughout the policy and in the title, I think we go with that as an example.
What is the definition of hazing here in this policy?
Up at the top on 2.5. Right here.
Second page.
So this stuff also in brackets in this paragraph.
Anything that's in brackets can be eliminated or added, or some language can be changed. If it's not in bracketed language, OSBA does not like you to change the language. But if you've got it in brackets, they're pretty
What about if
flexible
it's
on that.
Highlighted. The things that have to be in there.
No, if it's highlighted and bracketed, again, it can be taken out. It does not. have
She's
to be
asking
there.
highlighted and not bracketed.
Yeah, just highlighted.
If it's
What can you do
highlighted,
with language that's not bracketed? How about that?
if a language is not bracketed, their preference is that we as a district do not change the language. If it's in brackets, you have that flexibility. They usually give you a choice, but you can do all or nothing, or you can change your own language. So let's say, for example, we have bracketed language and we decide to change it a certain way. After the board reviews it twice, which is our practice, and then we get the approval, it's then sent to OSBA. They will then review it. And I've had policy that has been rejected and sent back to us and say, no, you can't have this. You need to rethink this as a board. And so then we had to go back and readdress on whether
Who rejected it?
OSBA,
How do they have that authority?
they will tell you under protections or litigation that they're not going to cover you if you have
Yeah,
that
there you
language
go.
in there. Yeah, so that's, oh, okay.
Who elected them again? Could someone remind me of that?
I do not recall who elected OSBA.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay, so again, if it's highlighted, that's something that they have added that we have to have, or that they suggest that we.
Because
have.
it's a change in the law. And so that's why they're saying under the ORS, which is the law, or OAR, which is a temporary law, it's a generic term or understanding. Yeah, they say that's the change in language, but you will also see in the gray that there is some bracketed language in there too. So if you look at, for example, on page 3.5, second paragraph at the bottom, it has some bracketed language that we can choose to keep or to get rid of, or to put in there what we'd like.
Feel like the hazing definition is a little too broad for my comfort. Like we're pranks. I mean, obviously like 90% of that is good, but. Also hazing isn't really a thing in. Elementary and high school in my experience. More of a college thing.
Why did in the second paragraph, second page? It says that may be based on but not limited to the protected class status of a person and having the effect of. I guess I don't understand why they put in the protected class status. Shouldn't this apply to all individuals? Maybe I'm misreading that.
Well, but go back a little bit there at the beginning of that sentence on the same line. It says that may be based on, but not limited to. Protected class status of a person. So I'm saying it's not limited to. So they wanted to make an emphasis of class status, but it's not limited to class status. So for me, the way this reads to me is that it essentially applies to anybody.
Yeah, I mean that the end of that sentence has no meaning, essentially. And I assume the protected class that's in here is based on the definition that is in Oregon law.
That would be a fair assumption.
Yeah.
So this. Is there a JFCF for adults? Staff, is there a GFCF?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I thought that there.
I can go back and take a look and see.
The letters wouldn't be the same. Are you asking if there's a
For staff.
policy that covers
Staff.
staff
Right.
harassment?
Yeah, like
There
we just,
definitely is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is, but I don't know if it's GF, because
Yeah.
G is for
Yeah.
staff. CF,
It's,
that's an AR, isn't it?
yeah. This is hazing, harassment, intimidation, menacing, bullying, cyber for staff and third party, and that's a GBNA-AR.
Yeah, well, the policy would be GBNA. The AR is the regular.
No, there's
Superintendent's
there's plenty of policies on harassing, and it's not a good thing, but I'll go back and take a look and see if there is a GFCF, but I'm not aware.
Cause I remember. looking
I guess the only reason the only reason I asked that is because age is also protected status.
Yes, it is.
And disabilities in here.
Yeah, I remember studying this a lot, because I noticed on the definitions too, that third parties is school volunteers. including board members.
What is a,
Apply to us.
what is an official bus stop? District bus stop?
Oh, it's simply a bus stop that we designate that that's where our bus is going to stop. As you know, if, for
So,
example,
an individual's home?
it could be in front of an individual's home. Yes. Yeah, I mean, the bus comes to a stop at a stop sign or at a stop line. That's not an official bus stop.
Right.
It's where you're going to be
But if
picking
you're
up and
picking
dropping
up-
off kids, right?
Okay. Was there a, did I miss the menacing? Was there a definition of menacing? Or is that synonymous with? Harassment, intimidation?
I hadn't picked up on that.
Yeah, oh. Well, they do have a medicine
So,
on
so
that,
that's in parentheses, so
yeah.
I guess I'm wondering, is the definition of menacing any different than the other
Oh, here it is.
defined terms?
Menacing on page 3.5 includes any act intended to place a district employee, student, or third party in fear of imminent serious physical injury.
Basically, if you've got someone cornered and you're holding a weapon, you're menacing.
It's a good example. But you're going to find these definitions are going to overlap significantly. So again, that's why they've got hazing and menacing as an example. If you want to add it, you can, and if you don't want to add it, it's still going to suffice. You still can't corner somebody with a weapon and be okay.
So teen dating violence falls in this,
Yes,
even if it's not done on public grounds or
At school.
or at
Mostly
a
what
sanctioned
Eric-
event.
It would be between students, right?
so how that works is a couple of Newburgh students are dating each other on a Saturday night. Nothing affiliated with the school whatsoever. Something goes awry and the students come back to campus on Monday. If one of those two students is struggling with their education based on what happened on a Saturday night, that then becomes our issue.
So is there anything that could bother a student that wouldn't be our issue? They come and upset about? It kind of sounds like a totalitarian view of our authority.
It is quite wide ranging that we have a huge scope of responsibility when it comes to conduct of our students on and off campus. And that is a struggle. So for example, in that analogy that I used where a couple was dating on a Saturday night, and then one student comes back and reports that something went awry, and I'm struggling to access my education. Now we have to spend time to determine, to understand if the allegations are true and correct or not.
And that's legally enforceable?
Here in the state of Oregon, yes, yes. I can tell you at a much lower level, let's move away from the dating analogy. Cyberbullying as an example, with the social media, there's a lot of that goes on. And again, if it rolls into school district on a Monday, as an example, because it took place over the weekend, or even it happens tonight, it becomes an issue tomorrow where I'm extremely upset. Yeah, that becomes an issue for us. And then we have to research and try and figure out and try and mitigate and try and resolve that issue, even though it had nothing to do with us. And so oftentimes what I would counsel, or I would say as a building principal, I would say, then stay off of Facebook, stay off of Twitter. And people would be very upset with that remark. And they'd say, well, you don't have the right to tell me what to do. And I said, you're right, I don't. These are suggestions, but I can share with you in the town that we're living in, I choose not to go to certain parts of town at certain days or nighttime because I know it's problematic. How is that any different when it comes to social media at 7 or 8 o'clock at night? If you know that this is going to happen and it's been repeated, why would you continue to? But again, it's not a real popular answer,
But you're dispensing advice. And the question is here, what authority should a school district have over its students when they're not participating in a district activity or on district property? And your answer seems to be complete, total control over everything they do at all hours of the day. If anyone is bothered by anything when they come into school on Monday morning.
There's a key word you threw in there, though, that I would debate with you on, and you said should. And that, when should a school interject or not interject?
When does?
Yeah. Yeah. Does? Yes. Then yes, your answer is yes. Should? That we can debate that.
So you're saying does based on Oregon law?
Yes.
Yes.
But if it's an Oregon law that's being violated, shouldn't that be referred to the authorities? And the school address maybe the emotional gap that's hindering the student from performing at their previous level.
So let me give you another example. Telephonic harassment. Telephonic harassment is if you receive a series of texts from me and I keep sending you emojis all day and night, just to blow up your phone is the term. Okay. If I keep doing that and then you come to school and you're distraught the next day because you were up all night because I kept sending you emojis and I had some program that did it while I slept and it kept you awake. And then you bring it to school and it becomes an issue. My question to you as a student is, did you tell the other person to stop? You need to tell them to stop. If you tell them to stop and they continue to do that, now I've got documentation. Now I can take it to law enforcement and I can say, this is telephonic harassment and this is a low-level misdemeanor, but nonetheless is a misdemeanor. In this case, this was a real-life experience where I had a former student that was going through this, and a parent came in and was very upset with me. And I said, well, look, here's the documentation. Your child was told to stop and it continued on. I said, this can be taken up with law enforcement. I was happening to talking to the dad who was a deputy at a time, and he knew I was spot on about it. And lo and behold, we got it taken care of. But to get law enforcement to jump in, as an example, in a situation such as that, more times than not, they're not going to spend a lot of time on that, much less the DA, because you and I, we can't press charges. All we can do is the police can take a report and we can suggest. But again, when you go in that formal of a process, that's a struggle. Also, it's federal law too, that you have a right to an education. And so when your education becomes a hindrance, then when do you jump in? When do you don't jump in? And then, of course, if it's a special needs student under an IEP, it's a whole different set of rules and laws as well.
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, but it's already prohibited in other parts of policy for students to give each other alcoholic drinks or controlled substances, correct?
Correct.
So if we struck hazing, we wouldn't be eliminating the prohibitions on those things.
No.
I'd be in favor of striking the hazing part. I think it's too broad and unnecessary.
So that whole paragraph on the second page.
Well, you'd strike it from the first word of the second paragraph on the first page, and then you'd strike the first paragraph on the second page.
So second paragraph on the first page,
Strike hazing.
just that word, but
Just
not
the
whole-
word, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you would start up above. If you're wanting to get rid of hazing, I think anywhere
yeah,
we go
do it
through the
in this-
policy that would be eliminated would be your suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay. We have an informal motion to strike hazing.
What do you guys think?
Oh, that's fine.
Explain that again, Brian. What's your logic there, your thought process?
I think it's just too overly broad. I think it could penalize just silly horseplay by students in a way that is unnecessary. Now, if we wanted to narrow, we could leave language that prohibits hazing, that includes, all the bad stuff in it. But when you start getting down into the making them carry an obscene object or a physically burdensome article, or these are just basic pranks, club initiation things that if you're not physically harming the person, aren't really that harmful. And I'm just tired of living in this bubble wrap society that we seem to be intent on building.
And somebody could interpret it a different way, like it wouldn't mean the same thing as somebody else. So somebody that just thinks, what, this is nothing, and then somebody else is like, well, this offends me or hurts my feelings or whatever, could be totally taken in a totally different way. So it's like, and then that the other person's really hurt in the result of that for something that it was not in their eyes, in the way they were raised or brought up, it's not that big of a deal and everything, and it can end up really harming their education and everything.
So if you and I are students together and I say something in jest and you don't take it that way, what we teach our students to say in this case is for you to tell me to stop. Because even though we're friends and maybe I've crossed the line and I've teased you about whatever, that's when you have to tell me to stop and to let me. And it's hard to teach students to advocate for themselves, but I think it goes back to what Brian is saying is that we want to put everything in such a nice, neat little package. But there are times where you have to learn to stand up for yourself and you have to say, this is not acceptable and this is okay. And by trying to have it completely in policy, it never really teaches our kids to advocate for themselves. So, yep.
I'm also a little concerned about the first definition of teen dating violence, which includes emotional abuse to control another person. I mean, explain to me how, I had some pretty manipulative girlfriends in high school. I didn't realize I was being subject to teen dating violence that whole time. They certainly emotionally abused me. And I just don't teen dating violence should mean a very specific thing, right? A very limited set of things. And that definition is so broad that it could basically be the girl thinks the guy has been mean to her in the relationship.
Or the guy thinks the girl's.
Or the guy thinks the girl's been mean to him in the
And
relationship.
in your case in point, you said you experienced some of that growing up.
Yeah.
So
Who didn't? If you've dated, I mean, you're going to date some narcissistic, miserable people that are willing to abuse you emotionally. That's just goes with the territory of dating, I'm afraid.
So what page are you looking at? Where's that definition?
This is on page 2 under teen dating violence means, and then item 1.
Item 1.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with item 2. I mean, that to me is the definition of teen dating violence. But number 1 is so broad that it could literally mean anything that someone in a relationship did not like.
I think the key there is just take a look at the first couple of words under number 1.
Pattern
there.
of behavior.
Pattern of behavior.
Okay.
And I think that's where
He doesn't call me enough.
right. And I think that's where you'd have to establish what that looks like. So I think you've got flexibility there as a school official. And again, in your analogy, I'm not getting enough calls where, yeah, that may be hurtful or mentally or emotionally hurtful, but it doesn't rise to the level of abuse.
Well, that's a matter of opinion,
Yes, it is.
right?
Yes, it is. And if people want to litigate on anything, they can, but I think you're on pretty solid ground there. But I understand what you're saying, that it virtually could be anything. And I take your point.
Yeah, I mean, we're building this field of landmines that our kids then have to walk over. And the easiest thing for them to do is just say, I'm not going to get involved with dating, period. And if you look at the data, that's what's happening in the world, and our species is going to suffer as a result of it.
Why is it teen dating violence? I noticed we put 13 to 19.
I think if you get lower than 13, other laws come into effect. And
Even if both are.
I don't know why
minors?
19, because I mean, that's a legal adult.
Well, because it's teen. And this
Maybe
is
we
teen
still
dating,
have
is that,
18-year-olds in school.
Well, even if you have a 19-year-old school, they're a legal adult. So I mean,
Scott?
do we not?
I honestly don't.
I just assume that 13 is the first age where you're a teenager and 19 is the last.
It is the formal definition of teenager.
Right. I'm just thinking that. Do we leave out 12? Is that?
What would happen if something like this happened to a 12-year-old?
We would still apply this policy.
Then why the age limit?
Yeah, why do we
And
have
why
ages
teen?
on
Why
there?
not just dating violence?
Yeah,
Maybe the legislature was narrow in its scope and didn't believe that 12-year-olds typically don't date. And so they just set an arbitrary number of 13 to 19 and called it teen dating.
Yeah, so once again, these are the definitions that are in Oregon law. Is that right? Good.
but we could take out the year.
You could, but since it's outside of bracketed language or updated new language, we could get it bounced. I'm not saying we can't.
Okay. I'm not saying to take it out. I'm just
Just curious.
Yeah. On page 3.5 on reporting, we don't define prompt.
So a lot of paragraph to that. What line?
Oh, under reporting.
Okay, first
First
sentence. The employee will take reports to conduct a prompt investigation of any reported acts of hazing, harassment, cyberbullying. No, there is not.
I guess I just don't like subjective. Ambiguous terms like that. To me, it should be within the first 24 hours, parties, parents regarding, something like that.
Mhm.
It's just like when there's a complaint, right? There's specific timeframes that certain things need to happen.
Right.
Can we look into that?
I can ask if you like.
We could put like a time frame on that.
Notice in the parentheses, we've got employee position title
Right.
is is that the same individual that we were discussing in the,
Title IX is different from local level, so no. So if you're looking down below, it says ORS. That's where they're pulling this from. So obviously there needs to be some type of employee position title. I would say, for example, I'd put in any district administrator as an example, or any licensed employee of the district. So that would include teacher or administrator. Because
so we'll
sometimes,
need to put that in there.
Yes.
Ultimately,
yes,
before we approve it.
yes. But taking a look at that word prompt and wanting to know a little more about that, let's just read this through. I'll just say the licensed employee will take reports and conduct a prompt investigation of any reported acts of hazing, harassment, bullying, intimidation, bullying, cyberbullying, and team violence. Any employee who has the knowledge of conduct in violation of this policy shall immediately report the concerns to an administrator who has the overall responsibility for the investigation. So for me, I don't know if you're really, if an employee came back to me and said, yeah, I knew about this a week ago, to me, that's not prompt. And
Well,
to me, that's not immediate. And so for me, that would be problematic if somebody was sitting on that as well. And what happens in a situation like that, if we're taking a look at something like this as an example, it's problematic because we're also mandatory reporters, and depending on the level of the issue, you know, that may be a DHS or a law enforcement call too. So we could try and put a timeline or a time limit on there, but I don't know if you want it so tight, because there are circumstances where maybe that prompt timeline, if we say we want this within a 12-hour or 24-hour period for whatever reasons, they may not be able to hit that timeline for various reasons.
Yeah, I guess immediately, I guess you'd have to look at the exact definition, but immediately
Means
without delay. Prompt.
Yeah, but when you piece them both together though, like that, I think it's pretty clean. But if you're like, no, I want it tighter, then we can go tighter as well.
And then is there any ramification if they don't do it prompt or immediately?
Depending on the level of severity, again, if it's a situation to where it's reportable to DHS, yeah, that can be very problematic. So if I'm aware of a student that is being abused in the home and I delay on that, and it's determined that I've delayed on that's going to spell all kinds of problems for me. I can lose my license, lose my job, and or jail time. If not a fine, if not some level of discipline that's placed into my file for failing to report. Yeah, that's pretty important stuff there. Yeah. On the other hand, if it's a student where a situation where there's a report of harassment, intimidation, bullying, and I haven't acted on that, that's going to be more of a discussion between administrator and the employee as to why they're not doing that. And then you follow the process. Progressive discipline typically is a letter of expectation, which is non-disciplinary, and then a letter of discipline, which is disciplinary, which then can lead on down the line as well.
How does that apply to like staff? Same kind of thing.
That's exactly what it is. So for example, if you're my administrator and I'm aware of harassing and bullying, and you've determined as the administrator that was going on, and it was going on in my classroom as a former classroom teacher, that's when you're going to sit down and have that conversation with me. And if it's just, constantly poking one kid to another, you're going to say, look, you need to do X, Y, and Z for better classroom management. And then after that, if the poking still continues on, then you're going to sit me down the union representation, say, look, letter of expectation, you need to get this figured out. We may need to send you to some training or what have you. And if not, a letter of discipline, and then it continues up the line and suspension without pay. But that's the overall process as a whole.
Yeah, this is interesting. So when we were reviewing the first two policies in sexual harassment, wasn't it sexual harassment?
Yeah.
I was referring to the training on page 4 or 5. I just thought that was interesting that we've got it here for the bullying, intimidation, menacing, all that for this policy, but not for the sexual harassment.
And does this, I guess too, I was asking, does this apply to staff against staff? Like if another staff is harassing or bullying another staff, how does that work?
There isn't any formal training, but what happens is that staff will report to their administrator and or to their association as well, depending on which, if they're classified or a licensed association. Whether you're a paying member or non-paying member, you still have the same rights as if, again, if you're paying versus not paying. And so that's where you contact your local association or administration to step in to help determine what that may be taking place if it does rise to the level of harassment. Because again, in those situations, if it's an extreme, that's where, again, it can affect your livelihood and your ability. So we can go much more aggressive because you are adults and you are professionals, and especially licensed employees, you're supposed to be an ethical educator, and there's that standard. And if you don't, if you're acting outside of that scope, then turn your name into TSPC and we go down that path. And I've done that a few times over the years.
Okay, so what do we want to do with this one?
I think you're gonna look at some of the, see what we can do with some of the wording on that.
So what I was told is I'm needing a tighter timeline on what prompt means on this report.
Well, I guess it's somewhat subjective, so. I mean, I agree with you, Scott. I don't want to make it, I mean, some investigations will take less time to investigate, or some situations, offenses will take less time than others, depending on how complex they are. So there's got to be some wiggle room there.
And the
I
level
agree
of
with
severity as well.
you. Right.
Or can you
So-
say something like, well, instead of like prompt, like somehow like being in communication, like so it doesn't just
Leave it hanging.
or being. What I want. So it doesn't get pushed down the pipeline, everything.
Or ensuring that there is adequate amount of resources put on it and get it done in a prompt manner.
Doesn't get pushed aside, like, oh, we'll get to it when we,
Trail of school.
yeah.
So in that first line of reporting, and I'm just going to fill in the bracketed language, the administrator will take reports and conduct a prompt investigation of any reported acts of harassment and so on and so forth. So going back to that, the administrator takes the reports and conducts a prompt investigation within 5 working days. Is that
Mhm.
tight enough or?
Yeah, because that kind of gives you a report, so you're not like having to solve it or whatever, at least you're communicating with the person of what's happening. So So you're in communication with them, like, hey, we're investigating this, it's gonna take a few more days, or hey, this is what we found out.
So what happens on an investigation, and there is language in other policies that we have where we have to act within, again, as an example, 5 working days. That just lets you know that if you brought something to my attention that, yes, I have 5 working days in order to look into this investigation. In fact, it's under our collective bargaining agreement with a licensed group that anytime an administrator receives a complaint on a teacher, that we have 5 working days in order to start that investigation. Doesn't mean I have to conclude it within 5 days, but so for example, if Trevor's a teacher and I took a complaint as an administrator on him and it happened back on September 29th, I can't now on February 28th decide to investigate what took place back in September. And so it gives you that tighter timeline of, yeah, you have to act within 5 days and then do the notification process.
5 days of when the alleged act took place, or 5 days within
Receiving the report.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how it reads here. Again, I'm putting in verbiage in that bracket. The administrator will take reports and conduct a prompt investigation. And then I just threw in within 5 working days. So that means I need to start that investigation process. But if there's ongoing harassment, bullying, intimidation, and so on and so forth, and I drag it out for 3 months, that's going to be problematic real fast, because now me as the administrator, I'm not doing my job because I haven't acted on that. I have incentive to look into this and to move on it rather quickly. And in fact, that's what I recommend that you put in there, is you put in administrator. It says employees position title. But so I don't know if 5 working days works for you or not.
That sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and worded in such a way was, I mean, starting the investigation within 5 working days, not necessarily conclusion of, that needs to be clear.
Right. It just says the administrator will take the reports and conduct a prompt investigation within 5 working days of any reported acts. Doesn't say anything about concluding it. Okay, so we've got some wordsmithing change there. Also, going back to originally what Brian asked, and that is to strike hazing out of this policy and any of the definitions associated with hazing.
I'll make a
On page
motion.
1-5, second paragraph, it's got hazing in
I-
parentheses.
So just scratch that is all I would do.
Well, why does it have the H of harassment in parentheses? Just because it could be capital, not in it.
That's how I read it.
Okay.
It's all in the OERs.
Oh.
OARs are temporary laws that have to be renewed periodically.
Who makes them?
It could actually be a department within the state and not necessarily.
More
the
unelected
legislature.
bureaucrats making our laws.
And yeah, and how did I learn that? I learned it through COVID. And so oftentimes, the Oregon Health Authority would tell ODE, and then we did our OARs via COVID.
Because democracy means unelected bureaucrats telling elected bodies what to do.
I don't even understand why this is even in there, because there's no. It's ridiculous.
Oh, so I strike it.
What are we looking at?
Well, we're finding discrepancies in various definitions of protected class, whether it's what's in actual statute versus what's in OARs.
Yes, you would, because law is law. And again, the OARs, like I shared, are temporary.
From the commissars.
So if we decide just to eliminate that, that could,
Eliminate what?
If we wanted to eliminate certain.
The highlighted section of the protected class definition.
Then. Because in Oregon
Page 2.
public law, it's not in that, it's only in the OS.
So protected class, you want to strike what's in gray?
Mhm.
We could try it, push it forward and see what happens.
Okay, because I would like to have fact, I would like to have them give me, you know, if they give us a hard time, say, well, can you give us some proof and fact of what that is?
But yeah,
Some scientific fact of what that is. I'd like to know what that is.
so yeah, well, I can go ahead, cross that language off. Okay. And then if we get pushback from OSBA, then I'll bring it back to the committee.
When you can ask them that we would like to have scientific fact. They wouldn't be able to do it. 'Cause there isn't any. And I'd like
It's
to hear how
interesting
they
that
kind of
they-
go about doing that. It'd be kind of interesting to see what they would say.
So you're a very bad person.
Yeah, they'll call me names.
Source of income is protected class,
Where you at?
same paragraph.
It's at the very end, right for disability. Source of income.
I did not know that.
I assume that's so that people who are on public assistance aren't discriminated against, would be my guess on
Yeah.
that one. That is also not. Oh, no, that actually is in the law.
Is there anything here that's not in there?
Just what we crossed off.
Well, I meant veteran status or
I
I got disability. but-
Well, if this
veteran
is,
status.
if this is student, I don't think veteran status would apply.
Right, right.
So, but merit,
Merit.
oh, familiar status, marital status would be?
Yeah, technically, what's the age to get married in Oregon?
Well, if the parent or guardian signs off on it,
16?
it's,
Yeah.
it's pretty
So
young, yeah,
there, in theory, you could.
yeah.
And we're covering up to 19-year-olds, so.
True.
Right, so you technically could be a veteran.
It would be odd for you to be in high school and be a
I
veteran.
guess
but
you
yeah.
probably need your. Okay.
Nice. that
Yeah,
we,
I just,
corrected them.
it seems
I
odd
think
that they
they were
just wouldn't
mistaken,
put
so
everything.
now we'll-
Thank you
They'll
for
be
In the
finding
law,
that.
I just. Cover all your bases. but-
Surprised if it was hiding somewhere else. Certainly not in this law.
That it on that one? Are we all good? Anything else?
How would you guys feel about crossing off that first definition of teen dating violence?
Where is that?
It's on page 2 of 5 and then right here.
If we throw enough at them, maybe they won't push back on everything. Because I mean, to me, 2 is the definition of teen dating violence, and number 1 is just
You mean the pattern of behavior?
the whole thing. I mean,
The whole entire thing?
yeah. Because I mean, the worst things that would be covered in number 1 are also covered by number 2.
Mhm.
But the emotional abuse thing, I mean, that's just so unbelievably stupidly broad. Or we could cross off emotional abuse from that and leave physical, mental, or just leave physical, and I'd be okay with it. But having emotional abuse in there is just.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of government we have where it thinks they have the ability to regulate such things. It's not a very limited government in their view.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Brian. That's pretty broad. What that could mean.
And Oregon has a prohibition against vague laws, I hear. I've been told.
What's
So
your
I move
thoughts, Scott?
we strike definition 1 from teen dating violence and make definition 2
One.
into 1 and submit it as that.
I'm getting a
Well,
nod.
I wouldn't say that we strike number 1.
Where you
Because I think
word
it encompasses some things that. I mean, threaten the use of physical.
But that's in number 2.
Because it has sexual
Number
violence.
2 is just sexual violence, isn't it?
Well, wouldn't that be physical?
Well,
Or is
could we
that
take, could we
Well,
change number
physical
2?
could encompass more than just sexual.
Right, so could we take number 2 and insert uses or threatens to use physical or sexual violence? Stick physical or before sexual in there, and that way we get the physical violence into number 2, we're covered on that. And we get rid of this overly broad language in number 1. Does that work?
That works.
So are we saying that physical encompasses sexual violence?
No,
No, number 2 would now
Be
prohibit
physical.
physical or sexual violence against another person.
So number 2 would read. Behavioral by which a person uses or threatens to use physical and or sexual violence against another person. Who is in a dating relationship with the person. Where one or both persons are 13 to 19 years of age.
Mhm.
I think that's better.
Because a lot of the. I would think a lot of like the emotional and mental and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff would fall under like the cyber. Bullying and all that kind of stuff too.
And just the idea that you're going to try and prohibit the use of emotional abuse, whatever that means, when it's trying to control another person in a dating relationship. You know, people play dating games, people play games when they're dating each other. And when you're first starting out, you're not very good at it. And so, you know, maybe we should give our kids a little more leeway to make mistakes when they're trying to learn this stuff than
And
what this has.
The shows that they have on. TV, like Bachelor. Talk about mental and emotional abuse.
What? Help me understand. The difference between, I mean, to me, if you've got mental abuse, it leads to involvement. I mean. Are they, can you have one without the other? Scott, Brian, any thoughts?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Mental
Well, it
and
says
emo-
mental or emotional, and
Wouldn't
I'm
that be
just
kind of
wondering.
the same,
Yeah, that's why I didn't
Yeah.
bring it down.
yeah. It'd be kind of the same thing.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah,
What's your Sage,
as a layperson, they're being pretty specific. And I think if you had mental issues, it would tie into your emotional issues. And I think the other way around, if it was emotional, that it would affect mentally as well.
I guess my question, and I see what Brian's saying about how broad this is, right? And I can see it being used inappropriately. Is there no way to narrow it? I mean, certainly mental, emotional abuse takes place.
In teen dating?
Gotta keep reminding myself that. This is for,
Because they're so, that, I think that would be really hard because teenagers are so emotional as it is. I mean, period. I mean, they're just, they're going through hormonal changes and everything else. So they could be having a moment and feel like it's this person is treating them badly when really that person wasn't. It was just that the person's having a bad day. I took it the wrong way. Because speaking from a woman, you know, you have those times of the month when you're just not in the right frame of mind.
don't you ever say that, Brian. Yeah, I guess the other part of this is to control another person.
What does that mean?
Right, yeah.
Manipulation.
It would be a really good law if we lived in a world that wasn't full of human beings.
And only
Well,
teenagers.
they are
Yeah, robotic teenagers.
What's your suggestion? You've been through this. If we strike that, if we combine them, what's
Well,
you're gonna say?
if you read it in its entirety, and number one is a pattern of behavior in which a person uses or threatens to use physical, mental, emotional abuse to control another person who is in a dating relationship with the person. So for me, if this was brought to me, that would be my first question out of the chute would be is there a pattern? And if so, what is that pattern? And what does that pattern look like? And then it's going to come down to threatens to use physical, mental, emotional to control another. And so controlling another would be then the next thing, because physical, mental and emotional, I agree. I don't think I wouldn't try and make that distinction. I just know that there's some type of emotional distress or mental distress going on. Physical may not be evident. It could be, but the pattern of behavior and controlling the other person in that dating relationship, those would be where I would be focused on. So for me, with these other issues in here, that's not where I'm getting hung up at as much as you guys are. And you make a good case for what you're saying. I'm not trying to discount that, but my focus would be on the pattern and are they controlling? That's where I'd be landing.
Girlfriend tells her boyfriend, if you don't go out with me Friday night, I'm going to break up with you. She's attempting to control him using emotional
Correct.
blackmail.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
I'll end this relationship if you don't do what I say.
Correct.
And if she does that 2 weekends in a row, she is in violation of this policy.
I would say 3 or more, but I take your point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't think that's a good law. So is there anything we could move from number 1 into number 2 that would alleviate your concerns, Trevor? I think we already moved physical down, right?
Yeah. I guess I would like to know what OSBA. Did they actually debate this? Think about it to the extent that we are, and if so. That was a good example. I mean, and certainly I don't want that to happen. And if it can happen, it will happen.
Mhm.
So that's my worry. My other worry is, kids can be manipulative.
Sure. And they're going to have to learn how to deal with manipulative people in their lives. without running to the administration every 5 seconds. It was law of the jungle when I was in school.
Just like fend for yourself.
Yeah, see if you survive, kid. That was the 80s.
And I had better music than that.
More fun playground equipment too. You could really hurt yourself on that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we can take it out of there. I'd be curious to what OSBA says.
Yeah, we can do it and then just see what they do.
I have a meme running in my head about what OSBA says, but I won't say that. Oh. You good on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly the threat or use of physical,
Yeah.
violence.
No doubt.
Is much easier to prove. Mental and emotional is a whole other thing.
So are we striking number 1 and then adjusting number 2 as suggested, where we put physical and or sexual violence?
Yeah.
Works for me.
Okay. Okay, so we're good with this. I need to make some adjustments to JFCF. So on this one, is there a GFCF? I've been asked to check into that. I've also been asked to find out, as far as the bullying programs, what does that look like? What classes, where, when, what grade level, those kinds of things. And then I'm striking out number 1 on page 2 of 5, and then I'm adding some language there on the line 2. And then on 3 of 5, I'm going to say that prompt investigation is 5 working days. Is there
Thanks,
anything
Scott.
else creating heartburn?
No heartburn.
Okay. So next on our agenda is policy ACB, all students belong.
So I would like, under the definition of bias incident, I would like to add language that clarifies that a constitutionally protected expression of opinion is protected and does not fall under the umbrella of a bias incident.
So bias incident, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down, means a person hostile expression of animus towards another person relating to the other person's perceived race, color, religion, gender, identity, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin, of which the criminal investigation or prosecution is possible or
Is impossible.
Is impossible. Thank you.
In other words,
Or
non-criminal,
inappropriate.
non-criminal offensive speech is what that's.
Bias incidents may include derogatory language or behavior directed at or about any of the preceding demographic groups. And you're wanting to add what?
I want
language?
clarification language that says that this does not include a student's or teacher's constitutionally protected expression of opinion. Yeah, I think that's enough, honestly, for me. And then I would like to adjust the symbol of hate definition as well. Once we get that done.
What's the difference between this and this?
This is what you identify as intrinsic value. And I'll just lay my cards on the table of what I'm trying to do with that First Amendment to the bias incident language. Right now, the way this is written, a student who's sitting in biology class and says, I think there are only two genders could be considered, that could be considered a bias incident under this language.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. And I want to make sure that we are clear that that is not a bias incident. And that that is protected speech of the student, and that we are not going to violate the Oregon or US constitutions by penalizing it.
Why aren't you just striking them? Like we did in the last
Yeah,
policy?
why can't we do that?
That one word,
Yeah,
Yeah, and do it,
That-
and do it in the other one.
well, it's a little, there's a little bit of a wrinkle there, and that is under the OAR. It's, I believe, listed out.
Mm,
So the definition is in the OAR, which is not a statute. Again, your commissar's regulations here. What is our legal responsibility in following OARs? I assume we have to.
Yeah, it's the same as law.
Yeah.
As long as the OAR is on the books and it stays current, then yeah, if it sunsets, then we don't have to do it anymore. But as long as it stays on the books, it's, for us, it's no different than an ORS.
So was everyone okay with that
yes.
clarifying language at the end of that one?
Mm,
So I didn't capture it correctly, so I'm going to need your help. So this to the bias paragraph, the last sentence would read, this does not include constitutionally expression.
All right, so let me,
Yeah, I didn't.
no, it's
capture
fine.
it.
That's fine. Let me write it down and then.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
All right.
I guess I don't know what this means, in which criminal investigation and prosecution is impossible or inappropriate.
It means it's not against the law what they're doing, but we're gonna punish them anyway. That's what it means. We can't, it's not illegal what you're doing. Non-criminal, right? Not illegal,
Correct. It's non-criminal.
but we're gonna punish you anyway, because you have wrong think. That's what it means.
Does this even hold up?
No, it would never hold, not under the standard we just got judged on. There's no way that would hold up under that standard, but we play by different rules,
Well,
depending on what side of the aisle you're coming from.
I think, yes, this does hold up until it is challenged through the courts. And I
Right,
think-
yeah, it'll be a payday for whoever eventually challenges it.
Right, because based off of the legal information we received was if this were to challenge based off of the former hearing, that more than likely this would be struck down.
mhm. Cause anything goes now.
So then I don't understand, why would OSB, was this a suggestion?
Oh, no, this is part of your Division 22. So every October, November, when the superintendent says, are we following all the standards under Division 22? Are we doing this? They put this one in there that you have to have this on the books. Yeah, you
And this,
obviously.
and this was
you didn't
reviewed
notice that.
by legal,
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
and they said this would hold up, this is bulletproof, this will hold up.
No, they didn't say that. They just said,
They said we'll get away with it for a while.
they said you will adopt this policy. Because if you don't, then you're out of compliance with your Division 22
What is
standards.
Division 22 standard?
Division 22 standards are the standards which in which schools districts operate under. And these are the things that we have to sign off every year saying, yes, we're meeting this, or we're in progress, or no, we are not. And then if we say no, we're not under Division 22 standard, then we have a year to rectify that. So for example, if we're not up to speed on our math textbook adoptions, one of the standards says is that you're going to stay up to date on all your textbook adoptions. And so if we say financially, we didn't have the ability to do it this year, we would say we're in progress, or no, we don't meet. And then you get a year to get that corrective action. And you say, we're going to do a bake sale in order to raise money to buy new math books or whatever. And then the following year, you need to be up to speed on that.
And sometimes too, though. Almost like blackmail using, if you don't do, we try to do the full funding. Not or take away the free lunches or do things like that.
Yeah, you can sue us if you don't like it.
We will come.
And we've stacked the courts, so go ahead and try. I'm almost done, I promise.
It's good because I wouldn't have gotten it correct.
And then are you also,
We'll get there. We'll get there. This one has been eating at me for years. All right, so let's see how this is. So this would be at the end of the bias incident paragraph language. Constitutionally protected expressions of sincerely held moral, ethical, religious, or scientific beliefs shall not be considered a bias incident under this policy.
How am I going to determine whether you're sincere or not?
How do I determine if someone sincerely believes their gender or not?
That's why I'm wondering about the word.
Well, if they say it's sincere, it's sincere.
Okay.
Well, isn't that what we use for sincerely held religious beliefs on COVID immunization?
Yeah, I didn't
systems?
invent that language.
No, I didn't think you did. I was just challenging it because that'll be pushback. So.
again, to me.
Okay.
All right, and then
So are we okay with adding this language at the end of the paragraph?
Yeah, I like it.
Yes.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
no, it's fine.
Okay.
So then, under symbol of hate, I would like to change the definition. I'd like to cross it out, starting at the word symbol. And cross everything out between there and the word and whose display. And I'd like to replace that language there with as defined by OAR 581-022-2312.
This whole paragraph over there.
It would look like that, basically.
Can I have the visual?
Yeah.
Thank you. So let's make sure I'm reading your adjusted language correctly.
All right.
So that the edited would be symbol of hate means a symbol that is
As defined.
as defined. Okay, defined under or by OAR 581-022-2312 and whose display, and then it goes on.
Yep.
Do you have that OIR up?
It's just the all student belongs OAR. It's, yeah. I can. Do you want me to just go to the definition in there?
Well, I don't know what it reads, so.
Pretty much what we are. So we're not changing. the whole line here. And considering.
Why did you want to change that?
Because I feel like there's less legal liability for us having. A law that points to the OAR rather than us having the language built into our policies.
It seems to make sense because if you staying closer to the OAR as opposed to how the OAR is interpreted, it keeps it cleaner, to your point.
Mhm.
I think it's funny that they actually call out 3 different things.
Well, if you notice, they don't actually prohibit those things. They prohibit the category of symbol of hate. And then they say such as, right? Including, they say including. So they don't say these 3 are prohibited, right? It's
Mm.
anything that falls under this new category that I've invented. Including these things. So it's what they used to basically bash you over the head if you didn't want to pass this policy, is that people would point to it and say that you weren't willing to ban these symbols. What they didn't realize is this isn't even banning those symbols. This is banning a broad new invented category of symbols that could include literally anything that the superintendent doesn't like.
Well, and 2, with the court ruling that just happened,
Oh, well, it's all unconstitutional. We know
Yeah.
that.
so anything goes now, so they wouldn't even have any of this. Because you can put anything now.
We should take this before that judge and see what she says.
Mhm.
I think I'm good. I don't have any other changes.
Okay.
Next on our agenda, parental rights, which is policy KAB and the associated AR with that.
And are we just looking at this because we've been talking about doing a parental bill of rights?
That's all it was. This
Okay.
is just was brought up. And so I just wanted you to see that this is what we have on the books currently.
Sure. Well, at least we know where to stick it when we write it. The cab.
Oh, and how, so what are we doing here?
So nothing. This was just bringing it to your attention that this is the policy in the AR we have. So we don't have to do anything with it. I just wanted you
Yeah,
to
I
be
mean,
aware.
in the board meeting the other night, there was talk that we would use the policy committee to draft the
Yeah.
parental bill, right? So this will be one of the things that we look at. when we're doing this.
So when are we gonna do that?
I don't know. Do we know if an email got set up? For collecting feedback about what people, parental bill of rights. We talked about that at the board meeting.
Yeah, because
don't
I
know,
know
they're-
that the student reps were wanting input.
Well, the student reps didn't show up once.
Yeah.
Because they have better things to do.
They wanted their rights to be heard.
Okay, so if, let's say, for example, an email is not set up, how long do we want this window to be open for input?
I would think about a month, somewhere in that range. We gotta advertise it. I mean, I'm okay with doing it less, but. I mean, that if, assuming it got done this week, we'd be looking at being able to start writing something at the end of March, beginning of April. Seems around the right time frame, I think.
So what are you thinking? Sending a mass email? Well, I mean, we need to draft that email. What does that look like? Well,
I
we
was
need to
gonna
frame it.
defer
need
to
to-
the administration as far as just
That's
where the board is interested in drafting a parental bill of rights, and we're collecting feedback about what the community wants to see in such a document, and send your notes here, sign to that effect.
And we're looking to expand on policy KB or.
No. The whole point of this is that, like, there should be something better than this for parents to look at and figure out what their rights are in the school district, right? What rights should parents have in our school district? How about that?
Okay.
Well, I think they should be able to look at the curriculum anytime, and it should be very easily accessible. And they have every right to be in the schools and in the classroom.
Hold on.
Well,
This is why we need a discussion.
but to be volunteers, and
I don't think you have a right to be a volunteer in a classroom, honestly.
I mean, if they want to,
They have the right to volunteer for it. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean that the school has to accept every volunteer that it gets, though. But again, this is why I think this is why this exercise is important, right? We need
So
to get
an
everyone on the
email
same
with,
page.
just soliciting input from community members on what.
What do you think should be in a parent's bill of rights?
There we go. That's simple.
did you have things?
I have some, yeah.
If you just want to kind of wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, no reason to throw stuff out there before other people have had the chance to chime in too.
Are we okay with pushing that out?
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. Get it in process. I'm fine with 2 weeks too. If we feel like a month is too long to have it open. Okay, what do you think?
I,
I think a couple of weeks.
couple weeks?
Couple weeks.
Yeah,
Well, from the point that they send it out to the point
yeah, after
They-
it's sent
Right.
out,
respond.
then you have 2 weeks.
A 2 week window
Yeah.
of comment. That's fine. Works for me.
And then will those come here for us to compile? What-
They said they were gonna set up a separate email to send them to. That's what Steve suggested in the meeting the other night.
Yeah, I'll put this back to the superintendent.
Right, it's
He's-
all,
he's
it's
got
all
the
on Steve.
master
He may have
plan.
done it all right.
So, yeah, setting it up to an email address, and I think if we had 2 weeks worth of comments, and I think that's something that we could then come back as a committee and that we could sit down and review and consider as the baseline for our draft.
Yeah. I think that will be good. All right, so student dress code. And I assume this is because someone came and spoke at our last board meeting about the dress code.
Yeah, and there seemed to be some interest amongst board members about student dress code. And so I just decided to bring this here tonight for you to take a look at. You can take a look at the AR as well. And you can see how this policy is written. And the AR is written. So for example, if you take a look at number 3 on the AR, it reads, students must wear clothing, including a shirt, pants or skirt, or the equivalent, and shoes. Shirts and dresses must have fabric in the front and on the sides. Now stop and think about that for a second.
Everything on the back.
Has nothing on the
It
back.
can be backless.
What?
I just read the
Well, it
AR.
doesn't say how much fabric either,
Mm-mm.
or that it needs to cover.
It does say on another.
Oh,
it has to cover.
Okay, so this is shirt, so you can, but girls have backless shirts sometimes, okay.
No, it says shirt, pants, or skirt and shoes. Shirts and dresses must have fabric in front and on sides. That's our AR. I don't know how we're violating our dress code.
They. So I remember. They,
Clothing must cover undergarments. Unless I'm not wearing undergarments.
yeah,
Fabrics.
students have to wear undergarments.
You have to wear under.
So I'm just, again,
Oh, man.
this becomes very difficult, very fast. Fabric must cover all private.
Well,
parts.
when it's written so badly, yeah, it becomes very hard, but.
It's very vague.
Yes, it is. It is very, very vague.
And I just love how too, you're not supposed to have your face covered, but
What, do
lot of
we
faces
know
were
what,
a year ago.
Mhm.
do we know what OSBA sent us on this?
Ooh, I haven't requested it. I could request an update because if you look at the dress code, it's for, oh, wait, I take that back. No, it is in your packet. It is, it's right here, y'all. Go to the last,
This is the model policy?
yes.
Jesus H. Sorry.
Yes, so the new policy from OSBA, responsibility for dress and grooming rests primarily with the students and their parents. The district expects student dress and grooming to meet standards which ensure the following conditions do not exist: disruption or interference in the classroom or learning environment, threat to the health and or safety of the student concerned or of other students. Students who represent the school in a voluntary activity may be required to conform to a dress or grooming standards and may be denied the opportunity to participate if those standards are not met. This is so widely written.
Yeah, it's not guidance at all,
Mm-mm.
based on.
It's,
Well, and it probably goes
feels
back
good.
to my concern, and that is, can this even be enforced? I mean. If a student's compelled to be in school. Right, their
They-
First Amendment rights are broader than.
First Amendment is speech primarily.
And what brought this up is that one student was told to either take off the sweatshirt or turn it inside out, and there's been other students that have been told to do that. With certain shirts. And.
These were the shirts with the like military insignia
Yes.
on them.
Well, I don't know
But
how you would
it's-
enforce something that's guaranteed by the Second Amendment. Freedom of expression,
Mhm.
I think.
And I don't see
I
how
think-
that is right when that they have to, some of this other stuff is okay. And who's to say what,
Well, look, just because OSBA is degenerate doesn't mean we have to be. So let's do
Yeah.
better than them. I think we could probably put some sort of language in the, well, this is an AR though. I mean, this. I don't
That's
know.
an AR, that's superintendent. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out though, that the AR. And that if you read down past number 6, just below, it says the principal or designee shall make the decision if the student's apparel meets the dress code standards. The principal's decision on property of dress is final.
yeah. So,
So
so the
Just-
principal can just say, well, this is what I want, and this is what's gonna happen in my school.
and that's how that's written. Now, the AR can be rewritten by the superintendent at any time. So just so that you can be aware of that. But if you take a look at shifting away from the AR to the policy, number 3 on the policy, it reads prohibit apparel that promotes or endorses alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, weapons, and disruptive behaviors. So in this case, the analogy of patriotic wear and the cross muskets that would fall under weapons.
Well.
Is
I
it
guess,
promoting weapons?
right. And. I guess my thought is here, right? I mean. The drugs. And the alcohol. Are legal at the age in which we're talking about. Weapons or firearms are not. And they're protected under the Second Amendment, so.
And we have a skeet shooting club.
We do, but you also, again, back when Brian was in high school and I was teaching, there was an old T-shirt that said by any means necessary, and it had an outline of a person with a gun.
Any means outline. I don't understand the image you're painting for me here.
So it's just a person with a gun, and it says by any means necessary, and you're walking around with this gun on your T-shirt. People could view that as menacing, harassing.
Well,
I just say. And that as an administrator is what you're up against, or even as a
Sure,
classroom
sure.
teacher trying to maintain your code, dress code.
And I think number 2 on this is very vague too, because it says that. That some of these stuff or any of these things could be hostile, if it's hostile to any group of people or organizations. Well. Who's gonna determine if that's hostile or not? Somebody could say, well. I don't like you wearing.
A sweater vest. Maybe you had a bad experience with somebody wearing sweater vests over the years. Yeah. It could be just that random.
Certain
I did now.
on there, I mean, that's so vague, because it's, you could say anything anymore. Well, I don't like. That pink sweater, it really makes me think of Pepto-Bismol, makes me want to throw up.
Sure.
I hate it, and that's very offensive to me, and it makes me feel hostile.
But you're taking a
And
look at
it's
the AR.
But
You're-
still.
You're looking at the AR, right? Or are you looking at the
Yeah,
policy?
AR.
Yeah, but again, the caveat on this is that the principal has the final say. So even if it's upsetting, the principal still has the final say on what this looks like. That's how this AR is written.
Well, can we rewrite that AR then?
I think the superintendent can.
Okay. Okay.
All right, what if to deal with the issue that was brought up to us last week? In the policy, under weapons, we add a footnote on weapons, and at the bottom, we put a footnote saying exempting displays of US military insignia and symbols. And that way, anything dealing with the military that happens to include a image of a weapon in it is not excluded by this policy.
I think that's too narrow.
Okay.
I don't know why we're limiting. I mean, I can agree with 3 prohibits the apparel that promotes or endorses alcohol, which are under the legal age to have alcohol, or tobacco, or drugs. But that's not the case with guns or knives. And how do you define a weapon? Lots of things can be used as weapons.
If I pick up my toaster and
Chuck
hit you over the
Norris-
head with it,
Chuck Norris is a weapon.
That's a weapon.
True. We gotta have Chuck
Right.
Norris shirts.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to draw the line somewhere.
What about the Indians and stuff like that with the bows and arrows? And
Such trouble right now.
I'm just saying. it's
Well,
a
would you be
weapon.
happy if we just cross weapons off the list? I think his point is that, kids were walking around essentially with like gangland style
Yeah.
insignias. Right? And that's what they're trying to prevent.
Yeah.
Well, Understood, yeah, I mean, and that was my point. In kind of the wording there about promotes or endorses. Maybe we can expand on that. Disruptive behaviors. Right, maybe. Maybe anything that.
What if we replace,
Violence.
what if we replace weapons with violence?
Prohibits apparel that promotes or endorses alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, violence, and disruptive behaviors.
Would that do it for you? I feel like you could still deal with the shirt that you were describing earlier. And we wouldn't we wouldn't need to deal with the soldier kneeling next to his rifle shirt and the crossed rifle insignia of the army.
What if you don't even put alcohol or drugs, but that depicts anything that's not legal to possess.
I think the violence thing is the most simple.
What are you trying to get at with that? Because I feel like specificity is our friend here.
Right.
Because we don't want.
I guess
too
I was
vague
just
either.
thinking, I don't even know if this is even enforceable anyhow.
Probably isn't, but let's assume it is. Let's assume that
That's
it doesn't get
That's
struck
fine,
down.
we keep it in there, yeah,
So replace weapons with violence.
yeah, depiction of violence or promotion, depiction or promotion of.
Well, I think
Violence or
what we're
disruptive
talking about
behaviors.
is literally just crossing out the word weapons and replacing with violence, and it'll read the same. Except it'll say prohibit apparel that promotes or endorses alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, violence, and disruptive behaviors. Which I mean, disruptive behaviors. Honestly, like that, that's probably the most constitutionally problematic part of the whole thing, because what if your shirt says resist? Is that a disruptive behavior?
Right,
I will not comply. Is that a disruptive behavior? Burn your mask, right? Is that a disruptive behavior? I mean,
can't talk about the revolution. Because that was disruptive behavior.
yes.
Yeah, I mean. That's fine,
Am I just missing the part where like lewd stuff is prohibited?
Yeah, what about having?
Well, I think that's what dress code's about. It's trying to reduce the lewdness. But as you can see,
But I mean, I don't see anything on here that would keep you from having some sort of sexually explicit image on a shirt.
according to the policy or according to the AR?
Policy.
Let's go with policy.
I don't write ARs. I write policy.
I think if you were to have lewd t-shirts as an example, maybe it's a picture of somebody in a position performing a sexual act.
Okay.
I would make the case that would be the disruption in the educational environment. And that's where I would come back, because you would have, it would draw a lot of attention, and my ability to teach in the classroom, if somebody were to come in and wear something like that, that would be something to where I could stand and legally stand and enforce and say, that's not okay.
What about a t-shirt? Stay with me. What about a t-shirt with the address of a pornographic website on it?
Yeah, so scale it back a little bit. So the $64 question of the debate. Oh man, I'm old. Probably going back 15 years now is I love boobies. Pink bracelet. And so the pink represents fighting breast cancer. And so it was all the rage of wearing that. And so did it cause a disruption in the educational environment? And if it was in the classroom and people were carrying on and snickering and going on, then yeah, that became an issue. So yeah, that was something to where we said, no, we're not going to allow that. OSBA balked at that a little bit, but it was just in my environment where I was working, that was problematic. And then after the newness of it wore off, if somebody wore it to school and it wasn't causing the disruption, then we were okay with it. But it was just at first, and what constitutes disruption, and I understand that. But if I'm not able to get up in front of the class and teach because there's constant snickering and looking at, then that becomes problematic, or I'm offended because somebody is wearing that, because I come from a more of a traditional Homer background. That's where you come back and you say, all right, look, you need to flip this over, you need to put it in your pocket, or I'm keeping it for the day, take it home, and you can have it, but I don't want to see it back at school tomorrow. So those are the kinds of things that you do.
I still don't know why we wouldn't have some sort of prohibition on promoting pornography in our dress code. If we're bothering to get down to the level of, prohibiting images of weapons and whatnot.
You could put sexually inappropriate logos or
Sexually
Images.
explicit.
images on clothing. Because you wouldn't have like a big, I've been at a gym where people have had like this skeleton finger flipping you off and everything on their shirt. That probably wouldn't be appropriate to be wearing to school,
Mhm,
stuff like that.
mhm. So where do you want to add it?
After violence, I guess. Comma.
Mm-hmm.
So prohibit apparel that promotes or endorses alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, violence, and sexual innuendo. So that's a no.
Sexually explicit images.
Or inappropriate.
Yeah, you can have sexually explicit images. I mean, that'd be a good one to have.
I
in
don't
there.
like inappropriate because that's
It's way too
broad.
broad. Well, saying that, promotes pornography. I mean, how about that?
I view it as art.
Good for you. View it at home. I read it for the articles.
Well, I mean, yeah, so if we're talking 17 years and younger, then it's illegal, right?
Mhm. I believe so.
Um,
In this state, who knows anymore, but
But even if you're 18 years old, that doesn't mean you have the right to influence or subject others who aren't of a legal age unwarranted to those things, right?
So sexually explicit images.
And then what about the
That be an image or a symbol or the symbol.
I'm gonna say
encompass
pornography
image?
and sexually explicit images.
I'm just going back
so
to
what
your,
about
your,
like bad, like if someone has the word like
Uh,
after you on it.
Website.
Go
Website.
F yourself.
Well, that would be promoting
Yeah.
pornography. If you
Okay.
came in with a shirt
You
with the
suck.
website of a
I hate
pornograph
you.
or with the URL of a pornographic website, that would be promoting
What
pornography,
about,
I
how
think.
how would you
Yeah.
word something like that? Inappropriate language and
Well, I think
the
you,
finger and all that kind of stuff. How would you do that? How would
Do
word
you
something like
put
that?
promoting intentionally or unintentionally?
What?
I'm just thinking of all the different avenues, kids will try to play. Well, that wasn't my intention with my URL to promote pornography.
Well, I mean, we're not
Do you
saying
have to
anything,
put
we're not putting
intentional or
intention or,
unintentional?
I don't think so. No, I
Okay.
mean, the shirt's the shirt and if the principal sees the shirt and determines that your Pornhub shirt is promoting pornography, then it's gone.
What if they
right?
don't know what the URL leads to? And they go back to their computer and then it downloads.
Well, that's exactly why we need that shirt off our campus,
Okay,
Trevor.
good.
You know, they wouldn't have shirts like that.
I don't know. But I mean, nothing surprises me anymore.
I say that and then I get surprised.
Mm,
Okay, so we've got two things floating out there right now. Language around sexual and then also vulgarity. So how do we want to word this?
Vulgarity is a tough one. Because what's vulgar to one person won't be vulgar to another. But I would think if someone came in with, a shirt that had the F word on it, that would probably fall under the disruptive behaviors, right?
It would.
Yeah.
What causes controversy is let's go Brandon.
mm. So they're not allowed to wear that. And I think there was a student that had a Trump, like a mega shirt on, and he was told to take it off.
Well, we should be
Shouldn't-
thankful he didn't sue us then.
Yeah, that shouldn't have happened.
That was under our past administration.
Yeah, that shouldn't have happened. I was gonna say, I'm not aware of that.
No. it was
Um,
under our past administration.
I've put a stop to it if there are, say, bumper stickers, political bumper stickers pasted on the outside of a student locker. I just set a zero tolerance for that because if it's district property.
Mhm.
But if you wanted it inside your locker as an example, I didn't have a problem with that. But
And they can wear any-
Anything along those lines where it's a political message on a shirt, like that's First Amendment, that's like
That's right.
core.
it's
First
well
Amendment.
within students' rights to be able to wear that. It's not disrupting the educational environment.
I don't think Let's Go Brandon would be, I mean, they could be, maybe their name is Brandon.
That's what causes controversies. It goes right up to that line.
Mhm.
And yeah, some people are named Brandon. Let's go me, what's your problem? Yeah,
Mhm.
So that's where it gets tricky real fast when you're trying to limit that.
Mhm. Well, the BLM shirts could cause stuff like that.
Well, we clearly can't get rid of
So
those.
we don't need to worry about this AR, that's gotta be addressed by you guys, right? It's to
Steve, to
interpret
rewrite.
and clarify and.
Yeah.
He will hopefully rewrite it based on whatever our final policy ends up being.
And that's the driver. The policy sets the tone for the AR.
Okay, well, the OSBA version is very worthless. I'm,
Just wanted you
have I
to be aware.
showed you my shocked face?
I just wanted,
This is my shocked face.
okay. I've
I
seen it.
can't believe that that's all they have.
Yeah, it's almost a joke.
Well, what it really, that policy in my mind is, it says schools, you get to figure it out because we
I can't
don't.
believe they even use this word. They don't like that word. I can't believe they used it.
I don't think that's the context.
I know, but still. I'm just saying.
You good? Anything else?
Are we good?
Oh,
That was the last,
okay.
that's the end of the packet. Unless I'm
Oh,
missing something.
So I'll go ahead and sign us off.
All right. We're hereby adjourned. 2 hours, huh, guys?
Let's go, Brenda. I made
Well-
sure it was done.
Well, Brandon Casey was wearing
I know.
that.
He always does.
Did you hear about his
Correct.
daughter?
Yeah,